Welcome back to the WSU Democrats Podcast. My name is Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization.
I'm Vaughan. I'm the vice president.
My name is Macy, and I am the president of Weber State's Human Rights Club and a member of the WSU Democrats.
Awesome. We have an awesome episode for you guys today. We're talking about the war in Iran. Going to be talking about a whole bunch of cool stuff. So, yeah, Vaughn's going to set us off.
All right, so I'll start with Iran. So Trump and his administration have stated that the end is near with this war without outlining future plans or what exactly the U.S. has accomplished so far other than 13 U.S. military dead and about 183 schoolgirls, Iranian schoolgirls that were killed by the U.S. and Israel. And apparently, that's not verified yet. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. But it was a Tomahawk cruise missile only used by the U.S. and Israel. They're trying to say that Iran somehow got a hold of one and then bombed its own school. It's clear as day that we had old military intelligence because there used to be a military base there, and it had been converted to a school and had been a school for years. But we were using wrong intelligence and bombed this school, killed 183 girls. And then similar event in Pakistan recently, they bombed a drug rehab center in Afghanistan, which killed hundreds of people. There were thousands there. The numbers dead are about, hundreds now. That this is very recent as well. And they're also coming forward with a similar message that the U.S. and Israel have said, which is Pakistan said that their attack was precise and carefully undertaken to ensure no collateral damage is inflicted. That's what they said. Obviously, that's wrong because they killed hundreds of innocent people, and we're just seeing this, very similar times in two different wars that you can just get away with stuff like this because the U.S. has, no one is enforcing any rules or policing us at all, and we're just seeing that with the lack of that, we can just continue to, or I shouldn't say we, Trump can continue to, just do whatever he wants with no consequences. Like the UN should it's there to hold people accountable, hold countries accountable, and we're just not seeing that. So also with Iran, a Trump-appointed senior intel official, he resigned over the war, stating that Iran poses no imminent threat to our nation. So that's, again, coming from the White House itself. People are leaving because it's so ridiculous. And then even someone who was appointed by Trump himself, it just shows, again, that conflict within the party, as well as Kristi Noem. He tried to downplay that by moving her to the, special envoy for the Shield of the Americas or something. Just to kind of cover that they didn't get along. She was doing a terrible job, and, he was wrong to pick her. He didn't want that to be the kind of headline, so he just, moved her to this new position. And then with the Strait of Hormuz, which 20% of the world's oil goes through, it can't actually be officially closed because it's in international waters. But we're seeing that the oil tanker traffic has dropped pretty much to zero because Iran has warned and targeted ships that have gone through there. So the oil companies have said, well, it's not worth the risk. We're just going to hold off for now. So the gas prices have already gone up. We're going to see them continue to go up. And I wouldn't be surprised if this war goes on for another 3 months or more.
Yeah.
One thing I will say just about something that you said a little bit earlier in regards to the United Nations. I do model United Nations and I have an international relations minor, and I have learned a lot about the role that the United Nations is supposed to play, which can't effectively be done if the Security Council doesn't see that in their best interest. And right now, obviously, you always have the U.S. blocking Security Council vetoes. And in addition to that, we have Pakistan as a rotating member right now. So nothing is going to happen if we can't get those people to vote in favor of that. And in addition to that, I think people think that the UN has the ability to just intervene at any given time, which is unfortunately just not the case. Not only do they not have any peacekeepers in that region, but they also aren't responsible for upholding law within individual states. They have to respect state sovereignty. And a lot of the times it's kind of like a Supreme Court ruling, right? Like it's still up to the individual states to interpret and understand and legislate around. And the ruling is just supposed to kind of be like guidelines that they're following. And I mean, that's kind of all they can really do right now, especially if the United States is going to continue to veto every single Security Council resolution surrounding violence in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And not just the UN, but there's other forms to keep the U.S. accountable. You know, when we don't like something Canada is doing or China or, you know, any country, we can just create these blanket tariffs and, sanctions and stuff like that. But we're just not seeing that back towards the U.S., which I know that the consumers and people like us would kind of bear that burden a little bit. But I think it'd be worth it so that there's more backlash against Trump for these actions, and we can actually see change and he can be held accountable. But also, it's just we have people around the world that were mentioned in the Epstein files have been tried and put in jail, or they have stepped down, and they're being held accountable. But when it comes to the U.S., we are not only not taking action against these pedophiles, including Trump, but we're protecting them and making sure that they can get away with these terrible acts, which is just not, I mean, really, like 2026 in the United States of all places, this should not be happening. Like we're supposed to be, we kind of go on this freedom and justice and liberty, but it's just, we're not seeing it today. And it's kind of funny that Trump kind of, echoes those older like founders' beliefs, and it's just the opposite of what he's doing.
Let me just say this, and this might flip the whole conversation on its head, but that's fine. As far as Iran goes, what Trump is doing is absolutely terrible, and the strikes that killed about almost 200 schoolgirls, I think that's absolutely disgusting, and anything like that is terrible. I think it shouldn't be lost on us that the Iranian government is reprehensible. I mean, there was that story a few years ago. I forget what the name was, but there's just global outrage saying about this one woman who was beaten to death because she didn't wear a hijab, and it's just like it's absolutely disgusting what they would do. They persecute LGBTQ people. Human rights is non-existent there, basically. I'm surprised there was even a girls' school to blow up. So I think and as far as, and Iran isn't the only one, there are other countries and other groups. I'm very critical of Hamas. They engage in sexual violence. They govern the Gaza Strip. They, not saying governing the Gaza Strip is inherently bad, but the ones who are doing that are terrible. And for anyone who wants to simp for Hamas, it was confirmed by a UN special report that they did engage in rape on October 7th, including gang rape. And they went in on hang gliders to a music festival for a bunch of young people celebrating peace, and they murdered them and raped women at gunpoint after murdering their partners. So it's absolutely disgusting. I think the U.S. does actually have a responsibility to be the world's policeman to an extent, because we have the capability to. And I think that if you have the capability to stop injustice and to prevent harm, you should. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you can just intervene, bombastically, and when it's not actually in the interest of human rights. Because Donald Trump, he was saying with the Iranian protests, when they were trying to find any piece of technology that could make it so you could access the internet, they're literally going door to door to stop them because there's that huge blackout. There's all these protests. They were literally murdering protesters, putting them on trial, and then they were getting the death penalty left and right and all that kind of thing. Trump said, "Oh, keep fighting, and if Iran keeps murdering protesters, we're going to strike them." That's not why they struck Iran. It was, it's a war of choice to distract from the Epstein files, and the majority of Americans believe that, or at least that was part of the calculation. So I actually do believe in somewhat of, forgive me for saying, interventionism. I think that if something can be intervened and we're not going to go through something like nuclear war, we're not going to have the bloodshed of American service members, because I also think we need to think about warfare a lot differently and use, like, I'm much more opposed to boots on the ground rather than taking out, terrorists such as the one, I think his name was al-Zawahiri, who Biden killed, who was literally on his porch, and he was one of the people responsible for 9/11, and they just dropped, I hear it was like either like a minimal drone strike, or it was like, it might have even been like a bomb made out of swords or something. I need to go back and double check that, but he was killed on his balcony, and none of his members of his family in the house got killed. It was just him. Why aren't we doing that? And then, trying to find ways to do this. And I'm not saying it's, simple or anything, but a lot of people talk about, oh, well, you're going to create chaos in the Middle East. There was already a bunch of chaos there. I'm glad that the Ayatollah is dead. He should be dead, because look what he did. But it needs to be done under a whole new leadership. Donald Trump does not have the best interests of the world civilians in mind. And if someone did, I think we could have a much better situation where, America, after focusing on America's needs first, could actually look to the world and say, okay, we're the shining example of freedom and justice, at least now. That was our ideals. Now we're living up to them. Let's bring this freedom forward. And that might sound bad, but I think there's nothing inherently wrong with that idea.
Well, one thing that I do want to say about the whole interventionism argument that I don't like using is the fact that if it was really about intervening against violence against civilians or militant or authoritarian governments, why Iran and not Palestine? And why the one country that has the capabilities to speak out against Israel and the United States, is that the country that you're worried about intervention for when there are women in your own country being brutalized to very similar extents? You are not only treating women in that capability, but millions of immigrants, and you're killing them. Like, I'm not saying, obviously, that what Iran is doing is right, and I do think that there is corruption in that country, but I just also find it interesting that it's the country that has the ability to speak out against Israel or isn't receiving some sort of benefit from the United States or even has the military capability to stand up at all. Like, I understand the sentiments of like countries throughout the world wanting to speak up in the Palestine situation, but there's a reason that there hasn't been further action taken, and that's because they're not regionally as able to do anything about it or intervene. And we have this one country, and that's when the United States suddenly cares about human rights. Mm-hmm. Like, if that was the case, like, let's intervene in Sudan. We've had a war on the Congo. Like, even if it's not about Palestine, Israel, like, why have we not done more to intervene in the Russia-Ukraine situation? We are the only people that have the capability to do anything about that, and we're going to say that they're intervening because it has anything to do with their government. Like, I just don't believe it. Like, there's nothing that the United States actually gains from that besides allyship from Israel. And like, that to me just feels like a way to justify the fact that we know there's a reason that they're invading, and that it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they care about what the regime is doing, what the government looks like, civilians. Like, they are there to support Israel and to defend them subsequently, especially with like them following through on strikes to Israel. I think
that's definitely true. And I think that's an interesting point. America should defend Palestine from Israel. Period. And I also think that they should defend Ukraine from Russia. The only thing I'd be concerned there is nukes. But other than that, I completely agree. But
yeah, I mean, I forgot what I was going to say. You can cut this out.
Okay. I like it when other people lose their train of thought, because then I know it's not just me and the activities I get up to.
That's what you said.
They don't intervene.
Oh, yeah. So Israel, they've wanted this war with Iran for many years now. Iran is their leading competitor in the region. They have a large influence with other countries there, and Israel wants them gone. They want them dead, and they have the U.S. on their leash, and they can just say, go get them, and we do exactly as we're told. This just shows like Trump, he campaigned on drain the swamp so much, but he's only made it far worse than it was on both sides too. But we just really need to see newly elected officials taking power and doing what's actually in the interest of the people that it affects. Because when with Iran, it's just history is going to repeat itself like it always does. Like when we got involved with Yemen, when we got involved with Libya and Afghanistan and Vietnam, it did not end well. The whole thing did not go well. When we go for a regime change and then get out of there, the militant power in that region just takes control and, just further commits human rights violations. And in a lot of situations in those countries that I listed, it might seem so that the situation in the country was absolutely terrible before we intervened, but by the time we were in and out of there, we actually left it worse than it was before we got involved. So that's happened again and again. We'll probably see it with Venezuela. We'll probably see it with Iran. Trump wants to himself pick the leader of Venezuela and pick the next leader or prime minister of Iran. He just has this strongman narrative, this authoritarian power, and it kind of takes me into our next topic, which is Cuba. And Trump was asked about the situation on Cuba, and he said, I do believe I'll be the honor of, or he said, have the honor of taking Cuba. That would be good. That's a big honor. And then he said, I mean, whether I free it or take it, I think I can do anything I want with it, to tell you the truth. So just another classic quote by him. He's an authoritarian. He wants to control the world, and that seems radical. A lot of people will hear that and kind of roll their eyes, but it's like, just look at the quotes. They're right in front of you. Who says this? Just look back in history and kind of compare, who does this kind of sound like, and you can just kind of draw the conclusions for yourself. And then comparing this to how Obama handled Cuba, obviously things have been really shaky with them since JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And Obama actually, during his 2 terms, he softened sanctions and he eased tension with Cuba. There are some critics that don't really agree with how he handled that. But I believe that, just generally speaking, he bettered our relationship with Cuba. And then as soon as Trump took office in 2017, he rolled back all of that and just made our relationship more hostile yet again. So I can take Canada, I can take Greenland, I can take Cuba. He just thinks he runs the world and he can do whatever he wants. And to be honest, he does. And nothing's going to change anytime soon if we just keep seeing this sort of thing. I mean, he can talk about taking all these countries and nothing's going to happen. And all this evidence will come out that he's a sexual predator and child rapist. And no one, I shouldn't say no one gives a shit, but the MAGA, they don't give a shit. And he's just facing no consequences whatsoever. He can just get out of anything. So there's no reason for him to change.
Well, there was one thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if I'd say it was a hot take, but one thing that I find to be interesting is when we do genocide research, because that's what I do for work, is I study genocide, and there is a framework that they use when they're looking at the indicators leading up to genocide. Like, what are the common components in all of these different mass atrocities that have happened? So this guy authored this thing, Gregory Stanton, the 10 stages of genocide, where they didn't necessarily have to go in numerical order, and it depended a lot on what the specific situation was, but those were the indicators that were common in all of the different stages. And we have arguably hit every stage before the execution of a genocide. And do I think it's comparable to the things that are happening in a lot of the other places in the world? No. But when you look at it from that perspective of understanding that these things can happen under very similar leadership to the Trump administration, I think it kind of forces you to look at things in a different light. This is serious, and we're putting ourselves in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah. Yeah, just going back to what you said as well, with America being the world's police force, I think in a utopia where we have all our shit together back home and people are just living the dream, then we can go around and, kind of police the world, ideally with officials who, unlike Trump, actually care about the citizens in the region that the war is in, wherever we're dealing with. We're not in that place here in the U.S. now. What Kevin Lundell said, just kind of echo that we're spending $1 billion a day at war with Iran when we claim to have no money for housing, no money for affordability, no money for education. We're making all these cuts, and then we just keep writing the check over and over to these foreign affairs that they're no benefit to us whatsoever. There's just no argument for that. And, we only when we have our own problems sort of taken care of, at least it has to be a lot better than we're doing right now. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're really struggling right now in the country, and we need to really focus all our resources on our own problems, and then only then can we go overseas.
Yeah, I completely agree that, we should deal with some of the things that are here first. I think that, for example, if there's a new administration, on their first day, they should put in motion trying to achieve Medicare for all, free higher education, all of these climate policy, infrastructural policies, all that stuff. But at the same time, they need to get their ass to work, abroad too. Because when you think about it, like, this is just one example. I'm not saying we should take over Mexico or anything, but something seriously needs to be done about the Mexican cartel, because the Mexican government is not doing enough to fucking stamp out that. Here's an example. Have any of you heard about the Funky Town video? Literally, the Mexican cartel took someone, they cut off his face, they cut off his hands, and they were cutting him with X-Acto knives, I think it was, and they were playing Funky Town while he was laying there in agony, just recording him like that. Every single fucking person who did that, frankly, can just get exterminated for all I care. And they deserve that. Same goes for Hamas gang raping women and stuff like that. These are atrocities. And it needs to be treated as such, that this has no place, not just in America, has no place in the world. And if Superman was real, I'd tell him, go fucking stop every single person that tries to commit violence on this earth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the jurisdiction. It doesn't matter anything like that. Yeah, consequences should be taken into consideration. That's why I don't think we should go topple Russia. If they didn't have nukes, I'd say we should. But, it just goes to show that, just because someone's not an American doesn't mean their suffering doesn't matter. If anything, everyone suffers just as much. It's just that I think the American president should be committed to bettering the material conditions in which we exist. And then once we actually deal with that, okay, we can have these capabilities of dealing with things around the world. And when I say that, I have a very different vision in mind than traditional warfare or anything like that. I think that honestly, this might sound kind of sci-fi, but we shouldn't be focusing on actual human soldiers. I think we should be having like some sort of a droid army so that, we can send them out and they get destroyed. It's like, okay, who cares? One could argue that other countries would do that too, but what are we doing with soldiers? They're putting up other soldiers, we're putting up our soldiers, and they're fighting together. Why don't we do it with technology? It's like, if anything, it sounds like that would make more sense. And yeah, and the only thing is, I hate that nukes exist, because that makes everything much more complicated. Because if nukes didn't exist and there was a good American president and a good American government, like, this world could be a lot better of a place. But
no, that's true. I'll change focus here. So RFK Jr. is trying to go about his vaccine policy to lower the number of required vaccines for children. And a federal judge in Massachusetts has enacted an injunction on his vaccine schedule. So that's put on hold for now. He stated that a lot of these routine vaccines have caused an increased number of autism and eczema and other disorders, and he cited no scientific evidence for that. I mean, this guy, everything he says, the scientists say the opposite. And this is just another example, with Trump saying that climate change is a hoax, and, there's a big cold wave in the Midwest. What happened to global warming? And it's like, Okay, we learned how climate change works in, elementary school, and you can understand like how I was talking about this before, how the jet stream is disrupted and the cold air comes down, and it's like it's basic stuff, and he just wants to deny that. And then you also have other people in his cabinet who just disagree with the scientists. And then this is also another factor and warning sign of authoritarian regimes. You silence the journalists and you silence the scientists. That is very important to take control, authoritarian control of a country, and that's what we're saying. The scientists are discreditable. They're lying. They're all this stuff to just make people not believe in the truth. And then also when you just push straight up lies and fake news to mainstream media, people will just eat it up. And people, like the general population, I hate to say this, is so stupid and so gullible and just easy to convince. They just read something, oh, that's true. They have like no free thinking. So yeah, I mean, well, it's good that the judge put an injunction on it. I heard that it's pretty unlikely that the appeal from or I guess RFK, his administration, HHS, it's unlikely that will go through, so that the injunction will just kind of be waived. But, who knows? We'll see what happens.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't really have many thoughts on this. If you want to go first, Macy.
I just think that the argument tactic to take scientific evidence and treat it as opinion in politics is something that is becoming like increasingly prevalent and shouldn't be happening to begin with. Like the fact that we have the audacity to deny science or deny higher education or, education in general, and to sit and say that it's indoctrinated by liberal viewpoints or that it's just opinion when it's scientifically proven. Like, I don't know how we've gotten to the point where that's appropriate at all. And I don't know how that's not embarrassing as your own political party as well. Like, I think we can agree that those types of things happen on both sides to a certain degree, depending on like what the argument is. And I don't know. I don't feel like that's building any additional trust with the public at all. And I feel like it's allowing that like rhetoric to trickle down into like individual communities and households and power structures that we've worked so hard to correct.
Yeah, I think that as partisanship increases, confirmation bias increases as well. And that's why you have a lot of people believing this shit. And it's kind of interesting because, yeah, the MAGA, they'll see anything negative about Biden, anything positive, or the left in general, sorry, Biden's not even president anymore, anything positive about Trump, automatically believe it. Anything negative about Trump, automatically don't believe it. And then on the other side, you could say there's a similar story, but it's empirically true that those that are more so left-leaning think way more critically than the Republicans. Yes, there's still going to be confirmation bias, of course, but not nearly as much. And then it's also interesting when you think about it, because it still is true that even without that much confirmation bias, people just believe random shit they see on the internet. So it's interesting. What will a swing voter think about, and who will they vote for? Well, what news headlines are they seeing that they're not even looking into, that they're just seeing that? And that's part of why it was so terrible how the media covered Biden's debate performance against Trump, because they were like, oh yeah, he's senile, he's this, he's that. And they didn't even touch on the shit Trump said he was going to do during the debate. They never talk about the consequences of electing someone like Trump. Whereas if you have like a very terrible weather event coming, they say, oh, well, this is going to cause this destruction. This is objectively bad. But then when you have a fucking person running for office, who says he's going to have mass deportations, he's going to have all these tariffs that's going to rack up prices on everything. He's going to go after his political opponents. He's going to try to take away our democracy. He's going to reform the courts and try to get his way any way he can. Then the media doesn't really say anything about that because they don't want to be seen as biased. But I think that they absolutely should say that, because it's objectively what he said he's going to do. And it should be objectively true that it's not good. I think we should just think about it like that, because what's in the best interest of sentient beings is good. What's not in the best interest of sentient beings is bad. because that is to them. That is what is good and bad. That is their interest. So as long as you're going by that, then that should be the basis. And morality should not be treated like the way it's treated right now. I don't think, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned this from the documentary that we watched. The whole fake news movement kind of started with Alex Jones and Breitbart. Before that, people would say crazy shit, even top officials, important people, and you would still be like, okay, this guy's kind of an idiot. He's kind of crazy, and kind of dismiss that. But now you can just say these outlandish things and quote these just absolutely false numbers, from the top, from the president himself to millions of people, and that is just okay nowadays, which is really, really scary, especially with AI and how realistic it's getting. I mean, it was one thing when, back in 2021 or so, when you could look at a video and just easily tell it's AI, and your grandparents would show you, oh, look at this funny video of a dog like shooting a gun. It's like, Grandma, that's fake. That was one thing, but now we're seeing like I would say I'm in our generation should be able to tell the best what's AI and what's not, and we are having a very hard time with certain videos telling it apart. And I go on Instagram and see videos and of something crazy happening, and people will be in the comments all the time arguing over whether it is AI or not, whether it is fake or not, because it's getting that serious. And when you have that AI factored into the fake news problem, and just how how okay it is and how mainstream it is to just push lies out, it's really scary for, again, a general population who doesn't really care too much about politics and are very easily swayed.
Yeah, and like it was so ridiculous. I saw a video. I think it was this guy. He got attacked by, it was supposed to be like a crocodile type AI slop thing, but it looked like a literal like dinosaur. And he got attacked by it, and he got away or something, or he saved his dog from them or something. And this boomer lady in the comments was like, "Oh, I'm so glad he was okay." It's like, were you born yesterday? Do you think that dinosaurs still exist? Why do people believe that? That's so stupid.
And that just shows you what people, because it's not even like the government is doing this ridiculous thing and they believe it. It's like they see a dinosaur on their phone and they believe that's real. That
the
is
Epstein files are
that
fake.
bad.
Dinosaurs,
exactly.
though, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
It legit looked like a dinosaur. And I'm like, bro, what the?
That's ridiculous.
Well, I was going to say, just real quick, I think it's interesting to me that the United States is willing to sacrifice, or I guess compromise, ethics and human rights and morality for financial gain. That is always the bottom line, is that it's the ability to just make more and more money, to make the richest people richer, and what can we do to gain and take away from the majority of U.S. people.
Yeah.
Every single thing, it ties to a broader theme of unregulated capitalism. And I don't know, I just think that's extremely disappointing.
Yeah, and unfortunately I think that's a very, very difficult problem to solve. I mean,
Yeah.
because other than elect officials who are kind of immune to bribery, which they might be at first, but when they see that check, they might kind of change their mind. And I think also with if we were to put term limits on certain positions that don't have term limits, these old guys that have been in there forever, and I think that would also help that problem, just to get a better, fresher rotation of people into political seats. But
yeah, for sure. I think that honestly we just need term limits, and we need to stop being afraid to elect young people into office. That for too. Real.
Yeah.
Because I think
age limits, I think too.
Age limits, yeah. Because it's not even necessarily, I'm not saying that every single, because I hate it when people paint it with such a broad brush. Not every single old politician is doing a bad job. Not every single old politician should be kicked out. Yeah, if they're 90, yeah, you shouldn't be in there. But At the same time, like the same goes for people who are saying they don't want James Tallarico because he's a white man. It's like if he has something good to offer, if he cares, if he actually has good policy, why are you attacking, who he is when he had absolutely no control over being a white man?
Yeah.
Like that makes absolutely no sense. You shouldn't you should never apologize for being white or being a man or anything like that. And if you want to do something in life, you should go for it. And as long as you're not stepping on others to get there, then that's fine. Period. But as far as young people go, like for example, there's hold on, let me find his name so I don't. He graduated from Weber and now I think I still see him around Weber, so he must be doing like some kind of other thing after the fact. Yeah, Zachary William Thomas, he's running for school board. We see him all the time at tabling events. Yeah, right here. I don't know if you've seen him. I met him at the tabling events. Yeah, running for school board. He graduated not too long ago. He's another young person. I don't know exactly how young he is. Looks like early 20s. And yeah, should absolutely be elected into office because that's how change happens. Okay. And we also need to stop respecting the fact that someone is an incumbent just because they're an incumbent. Like, for example, there's someone running against Hakeem Jeffries in New York because Hakeem Jeffries is a useless leader. Seems like he can't really get anything done. He is not against Israel. He's pro-Israel. He does not fight hard enough against Trump, and the guy that's running against him gets absolutely no airtime or anything like that. The other Democrat running against him, who I wish I had his name on here, but his whole life he's worked in hospitality, so he's worked in like hotels. He said he's worked in every single hospitality job that there could be, and I think that would just be such a fresh perspective coming into Congress, and people just don't give him the time of day. And he's another young person as well, or at least younger than Hakeem Jeffries, it looks like. So yeah, sorry for rambling a bunch.
That's good.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is I think that starts at a local, like grassroots level and a state level as well. Like, fun fact, I wrote my whole policy analysis for my lobbying class on this last semester. It was like my white paper of something that I genuinely think Utah could change. We have the youngest median age in the country, but we have one of the oldest age requirements to run for state office. So you have to be 25. Yeah, you have to be 25. But like, if you wanted to run for Senate, I'll be 24 when I could run for my Senate seat. So like I'm slightly off. You know what I mean? So like it's not like you're just barring people for a year. It's like you're missing out on like 5 years of experience past college, 5 years further entrenched into an industry to know how to benefit from legislation that would influence it. And it's like, it starts with that. And also like, I've noticed a lot of organizations have kind of gotten with youth involvement and doing more youth in politics promotion, but sometimes it just feels a little bit tokenistic. Like I feel like they'll say, oh, we want to hear from the youth. We care about what the youth think. But then when it actually comes to like holding leadership or making decisions or having knowledge about something, they seem to like have a really hard time with that. Like I'm the youngest board member in history for the League of Women Voters of Utah. And sometimes they treat me like I'm an intern or like my perspective is less, or they need to talk down to me or assign me to things when I have an equal role on the board. And it's like, you can't just have youth around because of how that looks for you. Like you actually need to value their perspectives and be more proactive into letting them start at the beginning of their desire to do so rather than when they're 25 and have an entire other career established at that point.
Do you know, for comparison in other states, what the age is?
Yeah, so the research I did showed that 30% of states have 25 or older. There's one that has like 30, and then there's a couple that have 25, and one has 27. And then the remaining 70% of states, it is either 21 or 18. I think like I'd probably propose 18 and then amend to 21 if I were to do it.
Yeah.
But what's hard about it in Utah is it would be a constitutional amendment. So it would have to pass out of the House and the Senate, and then it would go on the ballot the following year. So it would require amendments to our Constitution. It would be pretty hard to do. But the the majority of states have at least 21 at this point, and you have to be 25 to run for federal office. So it's like, why wouldn't you want them to have the experience leading up to that instead of having your most qualified candidates want to go higher in office the second that they start? Like, to me, it makes sense that you would want state governance to be kind of like the lead-in into that, you know?
Yeah, and that's a pretty nonpartisan issue. At least it should be. But if anything, I think it would kind of play into the hands of the Democrats. Just with younger people, I feel like that's kind of the majority, but it varies a lot. But yeah, I think it would require a lot of work, but I would definitely say it's possible just because, especially in Utah with such bad gridlock, or I should say, one party power over the other. When it is nonpartisan like that, I think that's doable.
What was I about to say?
Oh, I was going to say they actually did try to run it in 2023. A Republican representative in Utah tried to run the initiative and couldn't even pass it out of committee because they said it was too liberal. She was Republican.
Oh, yeah. What I was going to say was it's the anti-incumbency sentiment that should be respected, and that should, what's the word I'm looking for? That should be promoted, because the guy that was just here, Kevin Lindell, the dude he defeated, Bart Blair, was an incumbent, I think, for 3 or 4 terms, and he got his ass kicked in that election. Kevin Lindell won with over 60% of the vote. Like, he absolutely murdered that fool, and he was a Republican. And you might think that Ogden is more Republican because they voted for Nadolski, but no, they voted for Kamala Harris too, if you actually look at, the actual Ogden City. So, it just goes to show we just need to keep that up, because also if it's some boomer in office against some like Gen Z or some shit, like that could actually be really powerful. And I think a Democrat could absolutely beat some Republican who's just out of touch, acting like they know everything, or that they've been there for a billion years, just a dinosaur, not even an AI dinosaur, just straight up.
I think that's a big reason why Mamdani won, is because of, I think he's 34, because being so young, he just had, such a relatable new perspective that people could relate to in a field, politics being something that people find it hard to relate to and, have such a hard time getting into. They could see his campaign and relate to it and actually support it and kind of get into politics a little bit. And I think, going off of what you said, I think the just young people getting into politics, I think that social media has increased the number of young people getting involved in politics. I think a lot of that is involved with, if it is politics, it might still be like fake news and just misinformation. But I hope to see in the future, one, strict regulations on AI, combat fake news, and just come back with the truth and just really speak down against fake news. So they just can't push it out anymore. And then we kind of would retain, hopefully, that young base that we gained over this whole, crazy thing. And then hopefully, get more younger people into politics.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching the WSU Democrats podcast. Hope everyone has a nice day or night, everybody. See you later.